The halls of Westbrook Conservatory gleamed under the soft evening lights. Most students had left for the day, their music sheets tucked away, their instrument cases slung over their shoulders as they headed home to rest before another day of rigorous practice. But for Elena Marsh, the day was far from over. At 17, Elena wasn't like the other teenagers who walked these polished floors. She didn't carry a violin case or sheet music. Instead, she pushed a cleaning cart from room to room, emptying trash cans and wiping down surfaces. The blue uniform she wore marked her as invisible to most of the students and teachers who passed by without a second glance. Tonight, like many nights before, Elena took her time cleaning the practice rooms. She loved how the building felt after everyone left, peaceful but still somehow alive with echoes of the day's music. Sometimes, if she closed her eyes, she could still hear the notes hanging in the air, waiting for someone to catch them. Room 4 was her favorite. It had a slightly worn upright piano pushed against the wall, less grand than the others in the building, but still beautiful to her. She finished cleaning quickly, setting aside her supplies and glancing at her watch. She still had 40 minutes before she needed to move on to the next section. Elena pulled out the piano bench and sat down, her fingers hovering over the keys. She didn't need sheet music anymore, not for the pieces she'd been practicing for months now. Every night after finishing her cleaning duties in this room, she would give herself this small gift, 20 minutes of practice on a real piano instead of the old keyboard she had at home. Her secret had started by accident. One night about a year ago, she'd found a beginner's piano book left behind on a bench. Elena had taken it home curious. Her grandmother had taught her a few basic songs when she was little, before arthritis had twisted her fingers too badly to play. The book seemed like a sign, and the next night, Elena had tried playing a simple melody on the practice room piano. From there, it had become her hidden world. She'd found more abandoned books, watched tutorials on her phone during lunch breaks, and practiced fingering patterns on tabletops when no one was looking. At home, she played on a second-hand keyboard with missing keys that she'd found at a yard sale. But these stolen moments on a real piano were different. Here, the notes sang. "That's not half bad," a voice said from the doorway. Elena jumped up so quickly she knocked over the bench, her heart hammering in her chest. Standing at the door was Mr. Chen, the night security guard. Elena had seen him around but had never spoken to him. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I know I shouldn't." Mr. Chen raised a hand. "Don't worry. Your secret's safe with me. Been hearing you play for months now." He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "My daughter took lessons for years and never played with half the feeling you just did." Elena felt her face grow hot. "I don't really know what I'm doing." "Could have fooled me," Mr. Chen said. "Anyway, I'm not here to stop you. Just wanted to say hello, finally. Carry on." He gave her a small wave and continued his rounds. Elena righted the bench, her hands still shaking a little. She hadn't realized anyone had heard her playing. The thought made her stomach twist with both pride and anxiety. The next morning, Elena arrived early for her shift. She needed to finish the second floor before the theory classes began at 9 a.m. As she mopped the corridor outside the recital hall, the double doors were propped open, revealing the crown jewel of Westbrook, a magnificent Steinway grand piano on the stage, its black surface gleaming under the spotlight. Elena paused, mop in hand, looking at the instrument. It was like staring at a star, beautiful but impossibly far away. "Don't even think about it," a sharp voice said. Elena turned to see 3 students walking toward her. She recognized them immediately. Zoe Williams, Trent Holloway, and Nikki Park, 3 of the conservatory's most talented students, all from wealthy families with deep musical connections. "That Steinway is worth more than you'll make in 10 years, Zoe said, flipping her long hair over her shoulder. "They don't even let first-year students touch it." Elena lowered her eyes and resumed mopping. "I wasn't thinking anything," she said quietly. "Sure you weren't," Trent said with a laugh. "Just like you weren't thinking about those practice rooms you've been playing in after hours." Elena's head snapped up. "What?" "Oh, please," Nikki said, rolling his eyes. "People talk. The janitor who thinks she's a pianist. It's actually kind of cute." Heat rushed to Elena's face. She hadn't thought about other students staying late, hearing her through the walls. She'd been so careful. "I was just messing around," she mumbled, wishing she could disappear. "Hey, nothing wrong with having dreams," Zoe said, her voice dripping with fake kindness. even impossible ones. The three of them laughed and continued down the hall, their expensive shoes clicking on the freshly mopped floor, leaving dirty marks that Elena would have to clean again. That evening, Elena avoided room 4. She cleaned efficiently and quickly, keeping her head down whenever she passed anyone in the halls. As she was emptying the trash in the administration office, she overheard excited voices coming from the director's room next door. "The showcase is going to be incredible this year," said a woman's voice that Elena recognized as Ms. Winters, the program coordinator. "We've got the chamber orchestra opening, then the solo performances from our top students. And that visiting conductor from the National Symphony will be there," another voice added. "It's a huge opportunity for our students." Elena finished her task quietly, trying not to eavesdrop, but the mention of the showcase had caught her attention. Every year, Westbrook held a special performance showcasing their most talented students. It was a prestigious event attended by important people in the music world. Last year, Elena had watched from the back of the hall during her break, mesmerized by the beautiful music. As Elena wheeled her cart toward the supply closet at the end of her shift, she nearly collided with Dr. Reed, the conservatory's director, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and intense eyes. "Sorry." "Sir?" Elena said, quickly moving aside. Dr. Reed barely glanced at her. He was deep in conversation with another teacher, discussing the upcoming showcase. They passed by, their voices fading down the corridor. 2 days later, Elena was cleaning the student lounge when she overheard Zoe, Trent, and Nikki talking in the corner, their voices just loud enough for her to catch pieces of their conversation. "It would be hilarious," Zoe was saying. "Can you imagine the looks on everyone's faces?" "I don't know," said a fourth voice. Lily Chen, Mr. Chen's daughter, who Elena hadn't noticed, was also there. "It seems mean." "It's just a joke," Trent insisted. "And who knows, maybe she'll surprise everyone. Or crash and burn spectacularly," Nikki added with a snicker. "Either way, it'll liven up the showcase. It gets so boring with the same perfect performances every year." Elena kept her head down, pretending to be absorbed in wiping down tables, but her stomach knotted as she pieced together what they were discussing. They couldn't possibly be talking about her, could they? Her question was answered when Zoe suddenly called out, "Hey, piano girl!" Elena looked up, her face warming. "Me?" "Yes, you," Zoe said, walking over with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We have an amazing opportunity for you." The others followed, Lily hanging back slightly, looking uncomfortable. "What kind of opportunity?" Elena asked cautiously. "We were just talking about how the showcase needs something different this year," Zoe explained. "And then Trent remembered hearing you play. He said you weren't half bad." Trent nodded, though his smile looked more like a smirk. "For someone with no formal training." "So," Zoe continued, "we talked to Dr. Reed about adding a special segment to the showcase, a chance for undiscovered talent. And we mentioned you." Elena's heart began to race. "Me, play at the showcase?" The very idea was terrifying and thrilling in a way she didn't want to admit. "Just a short piece," Nikki said. "A real chance to show what you can do." "On the Steinway?" Elena asked before she could stop herself. The three exchanged glances. "Of course," Zoe said. "Where else?" Elena looked at their eager faces, a small voice in the back of her mind warning her that this was too good to be true. These students had never shown any interest in her before. Why would they suddenly want to help her? "I don't know," she said slowly. "I've never performed for anyone. I'm not trained like all of you." "That's the whole point," Trent insisted. "Raw talent, undiscovered potential. The audience will love it." "Think about it," Zoe added. "This could change everything for you. Who knows what doors might open?" Elena hesitated. Part of her knew this could be a trick, a cruel joke at her expense. But another part, the part that dreamed of playing on that beautiful Steinway, of being seen as more than just the girl who cleaned up after everyone else, that part wanted desperately to say yes. "When would it be?" she asked finally. 2 weeks from Saturday," Nikki said. "Just one piece. Something that shows what you can do." Before Elena could respond, Lily stepped forward. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, looking directly at Elena. Something in her expression seemed to be trying to communicate a warning. "It's a great opportunity," Zoe insisted, giving Lily a sharp look. Elena thought about her grandmother, who always told her that sometimes you had to take chances in life. She thought about the feeling she got when she played, like she was finally speaking a language that expressed everything inside her. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll do it." Zoe clapped her hands together. "Perfect. We'll tell Dr. Reed it's confirmed." As they walked away, Elena heard Nikki whisper something that made the others laugh. Only Lily glanced back, a look of concern on her face. Elena stood alone in the student lounge, her cleaning cloth still in hand, wondering if she had just made the biggest mistake of her life, or taken the first step toward something wonderful. Elena couldn't sleep that night. Her mind kept replaying the conversation with the conservatory students, analyzing every word, every laugh, every glance. By morning, doubt had settled heavily on her shoulders. What had she been thinking? She couldn't possibly play at the showcase. It was madness. The small apartment she shared with her grandmother was quiet when Elena slipped out of bed at dawn. In the tiny kitchen, she put on a pot of coffee and made oatmeal, the familiar routine calming her racing thoughts. When the bedroom door opened and her grandmother shuffled out, Elena had already set the table. "You're up early," Grandma Rose said, easing herself into a chair. Her hands, twisted by arthritis, curled around the warm mug Elena placed in front of her. "Couldn't sleep," Elena admitted, sitting across from her. Grandma Rose studied her face. Even at 72, her eyes missed nothing. "Something's happened," she said. It wasn't a question. Elena took a deep breath and told her everything. About playing the piano in secret, being discovered, and the invitation to perform at the showcase. She also shared her suspicions about the students' true intentions. "They're probably just setting me up to fail," she finished, pushing her oatmeal around the bowl. "Make a fool of myself in front of everyone." Grandma Rose was quiet for a long moment, sipping her coffee. "Maybe," she finally said. "Or maybe not. Either way, the question is, do you want to play?" Elena looked up. "What?" "Forget about those kids and their reasons. Do you, Elena Marsh, want to play that piano in that hall?" Elena thought about the Steinway, gleaming under the spotlight. She thought about how it would feel to sit on that bench, to touch those keys, to fill that beautiful space with music. "Yes," she whispered. "More than anything," Grandma Rose nodded. "Then play. Not for them. For yourself." She reached across the table, her gnarled fingers covering Elena's. "Your mother was the same way, you know. Afraid to take chances. Always worried what people would think." Elena rarely heard her grandmother talk about her mother, who had died when Elena was only 5. Was she musical too? "Oh yes," Grandma Rose smiled. She had a voice that could break your heart. But she never let anyone hear it outside these walls. Too scared of looking foolish, her eyes grew distant. "Don't make her mistake, child." Later that morning, Elena arrived at the conservatory earlier than usual. The building was mostly empty. Just a few early instructors preparing for the day's classes. She finished her first assignments quickly, then found herself drawn to the recital hall. The doors were unlocked. Elena slipped inside, her footsteps echoing in the empty space. The stage lights were off, but morning sunlight streamed through the high windows, casting a golden glow on the Steinway. She approached it slowly, almost reverently, afraid to even touch it. "It won't bite," a voice said. Elena spun around. A woman stood at the back of the hall, Ms. Rivera, one of the piano teachers. She was younger than most of the other instructors, maybe in her mid-30s, with dark curly hair and kind eyes behind stylish glasses. "I'm sorry," Elena stammered. "I was just looking. I didn't touch anything." Ms. Rivera walked down the center aisle. "You're Elena, right? The evening custodian?" Elena nodded, surprised to be recognized. "I've stayed late a few times," Ms. Rivera explained, as if reading her mind. "Heard you playing in the practice rooms." Heat rushed to Elena's face. "I shouldn't have—" "Actually," Ms. Rivera interrupted, "I was impressed. You have good instincts." She gestured to the piano. "I heard you'll be playing this at the showcase." Elena's eyes widened. "You know about that?" Dr. Reed mentioned it in this morning's staff meeting. Said we're adding a special segment to discover new talent. She tilted her head. Though I got the impression not everyone was enthusiastic about the idea. "It's probably just a joke," Elena admitted, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "The students, I think they just want to embarrass me." Ms. Rivera's expression hardened. "Zoe Williams and her friends? I wondered if they were behind this." She sighed. "Unfortunately, that wouldn't surprise me." Elena looked down at her hands, calloused from work and practice. "I should probably just back out." "Is that what you want?" The question echoed her grandmother's from earlier. Elena hesitated. "No," she finally said. "I want to play. Even if I make a fool of myself, I still want to try." A slow smile spread across Ms. Rivera's face. "Good, because I wasn't entirely honest before." "What do you mean?" "When I said I'd heard you playing?" Ms. Rivera walked up the steps to the stage. "I didn't just hear you once. I've been listening for weeks. And I think, with some focused guidance, you could do more than just participate in the showcase." She ran her fingers lightly over the piano's surface. "You could steal it." For the first time since the students had approached her, Elena felt a flicker of real hope. "Do you really think so?" "I know so." Ms. Rivera sat on the piano bench and patted the space beside her. "We don't have much time before your shift officially starts. Let's see what you can do." That was how it began. Every morning before her shift, Elena would meet Ms. Rivera in the recital hall for 30 minutes of intensive instruction. The teacher was demanding but kind, pushing Elena to refine her technique while encouraging the emotional connection that made her playing special. "Many of my students can hit every note perfectly," Ms. Rivera told her during their third session. "But they play like machines. You play like a human being with a heart. That's something I can't teach." For the first time in her life, Elena felt seen, not as the quiet janitor, the girl who cleaned up messes, but as someone with a gift worth nurturing. Of course, hiding these lessons meant walking a tightrope. Twice they nearly got caught by early arriving faculty members. Once, Dr. Reed himself almost walked in on them, causing Elena to hide behind the curtains until Ms. Rivera could distract him and lead him away. "This is getting risky," Ms. Rivera admitted after that close call. "But I'm not giving up if you're not." Elena thought about backing out many times over the next few days. Every time she passed Zoe and her friends in the hallway, they would smirk or whisper to each other. Once she overheard Nikki telling another student about the big surprise at the showcase, how everyone would be talking about it for years. Those moments made her stomach twist with anxiety. But then she would remember her grandmother's words, or the feeling of sitting at the Steinway with Ms. Rivera, and her resolve would strengthen again. At home, Elena practiced relentlessly on her old keyboard. She'd chosen Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major for the showcase, a piece that wasn't too technically demanding, but required emotional depth. Grandma Rose would sit in her armchair, eyes closed, listening as Elena played it over and over. "It's coming along beautifully," she would say. "Your mother would be so proud." 1 week before the showcase, Elena received an official program from Dr. Reed's assistant. Seeing her name printed there, Elena Marsh Piano, made it all suddenly real. Her stomach lurched when she noticed her performance was scheduled first, before any of the other students. That evening, as Elena was cleaning the practice rooms, she ran into Lily Chen again. "Hi," Lily said awkwardly, clutching her violin case. "How's the practicing going?" Elena shrugged, not sure if Lily was genuinely interested or just gathering information to report back to Zoe and the others. "It's going okay," Lily shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry about how this all started. It wasn't my idea." "I know," Elena said. She'd never heard Lily laugh along with the others' crueler jokes. "They're planning something for the showcase," Lily blurted out suddenly. "I don't know exactly what, but—" She glanced over her shoulder as if afraid of being overheard. "Just be prepared, okay? Maybe bring a backup piece, something simpler." Before Elena could ask what she meant, the door opened and Trent walked in. His eyes narrowed when he saw them talking. "There you are, Lily," he said. "Everyone's waiting in the lounge." His gaze slid dismissively over Elena. "Shouldn't you be emptying trash cans or something?" Lily gave Elena an apologetic look before hurrying out with Trent. Elena stood frozen, the warning ringing in her ears. What were they planning? Would they change the piano somehow? Remove sheet music she might need? The possibilities were endless and terrifying. That night, Elena told Ms. Rivera about Lily's warning during their evening practice session. "I was afraid of something like this," Ms. Rivera sighed. "Those kids come from privilege, and some of them have never learned that talent isn't tied to wealth or status." "What should I do?" Elena asked. Ms. Rivera thought for a moment. "First, we prepare for anything. You'll memorize your piece completely, no need for sheet music. Second," she smiled mischievously, "we'll have a backup plan of our own." The final days before the showcase passed in a blur of anxiety and preparation. Elena practiced during every free moment, her fingers moving over imaginary keys while she mopped floors, her mind playing the piece while she lay in bed at night. The morning of the showcase, Elena woke with a knot of dread in her stomach. She tried to eat breakfast but couldn't manage more than a few bites of toast. Grandma Rose squeezed her hand. "No matter what happens today," she said firmly, "I am already so proud of you for trying." Elena nodded, throat too tight to speak. She helped her grandmother get ready. The elderly woman had insisted on attending despite her difficulty walking, and then put on her own best outfit, a simple dark blue dress she'd bought secondhand and altered herself. "You look beautiful," Grandma Rose said, tears in her eyes, "just like your mother." As they left the apartment, Elena's phone buzzed with a text from Ms. Rivera. "Remember, play for yourself. Not for them. I'll be watching from the front row. You've got this." Elena took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and stepped out into the bright morning light. Whatever happened today, whether triumph or humiliation awaited her, she would face it head on. For herself. For her grandmother. For the mother she barely remembered. And for the music that had become her secret world, now ready to be shared. The Westbrook Conservatory looked different on the day of the showcase. Elena had always seen it early in the morning or late in the evening, when the halls were quiet and empty. Now it buzzed with activity. Well-dressed people milled about in the lobby. Parents, teachers, music lovers from the community. Even a few reporters from local papers. Posters announcing Westbrook's annual Showcase of Excellence adorned the walls, featuring photos of the top students. Elena's name was on the program, but her face was nowhere to be seen. She slipped in through the side entrance, helping Grandma Rose navigate the unfamiliar building. They had arrived early, as Ms. Rivera had suggested, to give Elena time to center herself before the performance. "Let's find somewhere quiet for you to wait," Elena said, guiding her grandmother away from the growing crowd in the lobby. They found a small practice room down a less-traveled hallway. Elena helped Grandma Rose settle into a chair, then paced the small space, her hands shaking slightly. "You know," Grandma Rose said, watching her, "your grandfather used to get terrible stage fright." Elena paused. "Grandpa? But he played in a band, didn't he?" "For 40 years, Grandma Rose nodded. "And before every single show he'd be a nervous wreck. Pacing just like you're doing now." Her eyes crinkled with the memory. But the minute he stepped on stage, it all melted away. He used to say the music was bigger than the fear. Elena smiled, grateful for the story, for this small connection to the grandfather who had passed away before she was born. "I hope that happens for me." "It will," Grandma Rose said with certainty. "Just remember why you're playing." A soft knock interrupted them. Ms. Rivera peeked in, dressed elegantly in a dark green dress, her curly hair pinned up. "There you are," she said, stepping inside. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified," Elena admitted. Ms. Rivera smiled sympathetically. "That's normal." She turned to Grandma Rose. "You must be Elena's grandmother. I've heard so much about you." "And I about you," Grandma Rose replied warmly. "Thank you for believing in my girl." "That part's easy," Ms. Rivera said. "She has a rare gift." She turned back to Elena. "I just came to tell you there's been a small change. Dr. Reed decided to say a few words before the performances begin, so you'll go on right after his introduction." Elena nodded, trying to calm the flutter in her stomach. "Have you seen any of them? Zoe and the others?" "They're all here," Miss Rivera confirmed. Looking very pleased with themselves, she hesitated. "Lily Chen pulled me aside earlier." She seemed worried but wouldn't say why. That didn't help Elena's nerves. Whatever they had planned, it was too late to back out now. She took a deep breath. "I guess I'll find out soon enough." "Whatever happens," Ms. Rivera said firmly, "play your heart out. That's all that matters." She checked her watch. "I should go. They're seating people now. I'll make sure your grandmother gets a good seat." She squeezed Elena's hand. 30 minutes. You've got this." After they left, Elena stood alone in the practice room, trying to quiet her mind. She went through the piece in her head one more time, her fingers moving in the air. Then she closed her eyes and remembered why she was doing this. Not for Zoe or Trent or anyone else, but for herself. For the pure joy of playing. 20 minutes later, a student volunteer came to escort her to the backstage area. The recital hall was packed, every seat filled. Peering through a gap in the curtains, Elena spotted Grandma Rose in the third row, Ms. Rivera beside her. In the front row, a stern-looking man with silver hair was reading through the program. The visiting conductor from the National Symphony, she guessed. Dr. Reed appeared at her side, startling her. "Miss Marsh," he said, his voice formal. "Are you prepared?" Elena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "Good." He studied her for a moment. "Ms. Rivera speaks very highly of your abilities. I admit I was skeptical when the student suggested this unconventional addition to our program." His expression softened slightly. "But I believe in giving talent a chance regardless of its source." Before Elena could respond, the house lights dimmed, and Dr. Reed moved to the stage. She listened as he welcomed everyone and spoke about the conservatory's commitment to excellence, its proud traditions, its famous alumni. "Before we begin our scheduled performances," he said finally, "we have a special addition to our program. Please welcome Elena Marsh, who will be performing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major." There was polite applause as Elena walked onto the stage, her legs feeling wooden beneath her. The spotlight was blinding, making it hard to see the audience, but she could feel their attention like a physical weight. A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. Who was this girl no one had seen before? Elena sat down at the Steinway, adjusting the bench. This was the moment she'd dreamed of and dreaded. She placed her hands on the keys, ready to begin, and froze. Something was wrong. The keys beneath her fingers felt off. She pressed one gently. The sound that came out was distorted, almost comical. Several people in the audience tittered. Elena tried another key. Same problem. Her heart sank as she realized what had happened. Someone had tampered with the piano, altering it to make her sound ridiculous. From the corner of her eye, she could see Zoe and her friends in the wings, barely containing their laughter. For a terrible moment, Elena considered running off the stage. The humiliation was exactly what they'd planned. But then she remembered Lily's warning. Bring a backup piece. Ms. Rivera had prepared her for this. They'd suspected something like this might happen, though not exactly what. Together, they'd selected an alternate piece that would work even if the piano wasn't functioning properly. Bach's Prelude in C major from the Well-Tempered Clavier. Its steady mathematical structure could withstand some distortion and still convey its beauty. Elena took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and began to play. The notes were strange, off-key in places, but she played with a determination that seemed to fill the hall. The audience quieted, perhaps sensing that something unusual was happening. She was halfway through the Bach when suddenly, Dr. Reed appeared at her side. He bent down and whispered, "Stop, please." Elena's hands froze over the keys, mortification washing over her. This was it. She was being pulled off stage, exactly as Zoe and the others had hoped. But instead of dismissing her, Dr. Reed turned to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. It appears that our instrument has been compromised. This is unacceptable and will be addressed." His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "We will take a brief intermission while we prepare the backup." Piano. A buzz of conversation rose from the audience's stagehands hurried to roll out a second piano from the back of the stage, not as grand as the Steinway, but still a quality instrument. Dr. Reed spoke quietly to the visiting conductor, who was now standing, his face stormy. Ms. Rivera appeared beside Elena, putting a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Are you okay?" she whispered. Elena nodded, though she felt shaky. "I can still play." "I know you can," Ms. Rivera said. "And now everyone will hear what you can really do." Dr. Reed returned to the microphone. "Due to circumstances beyond Miss Marsh's control, she will now perform her original selection on our second piano. Please extend her your patience." The audience settled again. Elena approached the new piano, trying to ignore the whispers. She sat down, tested a few keys, they responded normally, and began again. This time she played Chopin's Nocturne as she'd intended. The first note rang out clear and true, filling the hall with its pure tone. Elena closed her eyes, letting the music flow through her, forgetting the audience, the sabotage, everything but the conversation between her fingers and the keys. The piece was melancholy yet hopeful, like a bittersweet memory. Elena played it the way Ms. Rivera had taught her, with technical precision but also with heart. She thought of her mother, whom she barely remembered but who had given her this gift of music. She thought of Grandma Rose, who had sacrificed so much to raise her. She poured all of it into her playing. When the final note faded, there was a moment of complete silence. Elena opened her eyes, uncertain. Then the applause began. It started with one person, the visiting conductor, and spread until the entire hall was filled with it. People were standing. Elena saw Ms. Rivera wiping tears from her eyes, Grandma Rose beaming with pride. In the wings, Zoe and her friends stood frozen, their prank having backfired completely. Only Lily was smiling, giving Elena a small thumbs up. Dr. Reed returned to the stage, offering Elena his hand. "That," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "is what musical talent truly sounds like." He turned to the audience. "Let's hear it once more for Elena Marsh." The applause grew even louder. Elena felt dizzy with relief and joy and lingering adrenaline. As she was led off stage, the visiting conductor stepped into her path. "Young lady," he said, his stern face now animated with interest, "where did you study?" I didn't," Elena stammered. "I mean, not formally. Ms. Rivera has been helping me recently, but mostly I taught myself." He looked stunned. "Self-taught? And you play like that?" He shook his head in disbelief. "We need to talk after the showcase. You have extraordinary potential." Before Elena could process his words, Dr. Reed was pulling her aside. His expression was a mix of admiration and embarrassment. "Miss Marsh, I owe you an apology. It appears that some of our students thought it would be amusing to sabotage your performance." "I know," Elena said quietly. His eyebrows rose. "You knew? And you still went on stage?" Elena thought about everything that had led her to this moment. The secret late-night practices, Ms. Rivera's belief in her, Grandma Rose's encouragement, even Lily's warning. "I had to," she said simply. "For me?" Dr. Reed studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Well, I'm glad you did. And I promise you, the students responsible will face serious consequences." As the next performer was announced, Elena made her way back to where Grandma Rose waited, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "My beautiful girl," she whispered, pulling Elena into a tight hug. "You showed them all." Over her grandmother's shoulder, Elena saw Zoe, Trent, and Nikki being led away by a furious-looking faculty member. Their plan had failed. Instead of humiliation, they had given Elena something precious, a chance to be heard. Ms. Rivera joined them, practically bouncing with excitement. "Did you hear what the conductor said? This could be just the beginning for you." Elena smiled, still processing everything that had happened. Whatever came next, whether a scholarship, formal training, or simply the respect of those who had looked down on her, she knew one thing for certain. No one would ever silence her music again. The next morning, Elena woke to sunlight streaming through her bedroom window and the smell of coffee brewing. For a moment, she lay still, wondering if yesterday had been a dream. Then she heard voices in the kitchen. Grandma Rose talking to someone. "Ms. Rivera?" Elena quickly dressed and stepped into the hallway. It wasn't Ms. Rivera she heard, but a man's voice, deep and accented. The visiting conductor. He sat at their small kitchen table, a mug of coffee in front of him, engaged in conversation with Grandma Rose. They both looked up as Elena entered. "Ah, there she is," the conductor said, rising to his feet. "Good morning, Elena." "Good morning," she replied, shooting a questioning look at her grandmother. "Mr. Antonov stopped by to speak with you," Grandma Rose explained. "I told him you were still sleeping after your big day." "Please call me Victor," the conductor said. "I hope I'm not intruding, but after yesterday's performance, I couldn't wait to discuss your future." Elena blinked, still trying to process that the conductor of the National Symphony was standing in her kitchen. "My future?" "Sit down, dear," Grandma Rose said, pouring Elena a cup of coffee. "Victor has an interesting proposal." Over the next hour, Victor Antonov explained that he wasn't just a conductor. He also served on the board of the Clifton Music Academy, one of the most prestigious music schools in the country. They offered a special scholarship program for exceptional young musicians with non-traditional backgrounds, students like Elena, who had developed their talents outside the usual channels. "What you played yesterday," Victor said, his eyes intense, "it wasn't just technically impressive. Many students can play the notes correctly. What you have is much rarer. You speak through the music. You make people feel." Elena stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "Are you offering me a scholarship?" "Potentially, yes. You would need to formally audition, of course, but after what I heard yesterday, I have no doubts about the outcome." He smiled. "The Academy's winter semester begins in January. That gives you 4 months to prepare. Grandma Rose reached across the table and squeezed Elena's hand. What do you think, sweetheart? Elena's mind was spinning. The Clifton Music Academy was a dream she'd never even allowed herself to have. Students from there went on to perform with the best orchestras, to teach at top universities, to record albums. It was a door to a world she'd only glimpsed from the outside. But she hesitated, looking at her grandmother. What about you? I can't leave you alone. In my job at the conservatory, we need the money. Don't worry about me, Grandma Rose said firmly. I've been taking care of myself for longer than you've been alive. And as for finances, Victor added, the scholarship covers tuition, housing, and a small stipend. Many students also find part-time work teaching or performing. I don't know what to say, Elena stammered. Say you'll think about it, Victor suggested, sliding a business card across the table. Talk it over with your grandmother and Ms. Rivera. Call me when you decide. After he left, Elena and Grandma Rose sat in stunned silence. Is this really happening? Elena finally asked. Grandma Rose smiled, tears in her eyes. Your mother would be so proud. Later that day, Elena received a call from Dr. Reed. The news of her performance and the sabotage attempt had spread throughout the conservatory. Zoe, Trent, and Nikki had been suspended pending a disciplinary hearing. Meanwhile, Dr. Reed wanted to offer Elena something: formal piano lessons twice a week with Ms. Rivera, free of charge, to help her prepare for her Clifton audition. Consider it our way of making amends, he said, and perhaps more importantly, our investment in a talent that should have been recognized sooner. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind. Elena continued her job at the conservatory, but everything else had changed. Instead of hiding her playing, she now had official permission to use the practice rooms. Students who had once ignored her now nodded in the hallways or stopped to chat. Several even asked for her advice on emotional expression in their playing. Ms. Rivera worked with her tirelessly, expanding her repertoire beyond Chopin and Bach. Clifton will want to see range, she explained. Classical, romantic, contemporary. Show them you can handle it all. Most surprising was Lily Chen, who approached Elena one afternoon as she was cleaning the student lounge. I should have done more, Lily said, looking genuinely remorseful. When I realized what they were planning, I should have stopped them, not just warned you. You did what you could, Elena assured her. Besides, it all worked out in the end. Lily shook her head. Still, I'm sorry. And I was wondering. She hesitated. Would you want to play a duet sometime? Piano and violin? I'm working on this piece that I think would sound amazing with your style. Elena was touched by the offer. I'd like that. Not everyone was supportive. A few students, friends of the suspended trio, made snide comments when Elena passed. Guess all you need is a sob story to get ahead, one muttered loud enough for her to hear. Elena tried not to let it bother her, focusing instead on her practice and preparation. At home, Elena and Grandma Rose faced their own challenges. If Elena accepted the Clifton scholarship, they would need to figure out living arrangements. The academy was 3 hours away, too far to commute. You could stay in the student housing, Grandma Rose suggested one evening as they sorted through Elena's growing collection of sheet music. And leave you here alone? No way, Elena said firmly. I've been thinking about that, Grandma Rose said, setting aside a Beethoven sonata. My sister Beth has been asking me to come live with her in Portland for years. Her house is all on one level, easier on my knees. And she's got that garden she's always bragging about. Elena looked up, surprised. You'd move to Portland. If it meant you could follow this opportunity, in a heartbeat. Grandma Rose smiled. I've spent my life in this apartment, Elena. Maybe it's time for both of us to try something new. Tears welled in Elena's eyes. Her grandmother had already sacrificed so much to raise her after her mother died, and now she was willing to uproot her life again. Also, Elena could pursue this chance. I don't deserve you, Elena whispered. Nonsense, Grandma Rose said briskly, wiping away a tear of her own. You deserve everything good that comes your way. It's about time the world saw what I've always known. As October turned to November, Elena's audition date grew closer. She practiced 4 hours every day after work, her fingers growing stronger, her understanding of the music deepening. Ms. Rivera pushed her harder than ever, challenging her to find new layers and pieces she thought she already knew. Don't just play the notes, Ms. Rivera would say. Tell the story. Make me feel what Chopin felt, what Mozart felt. Make me forget I'm listening to a piano. One evening, after a particularly intense session, Ms. Rivera sat beside Elena on the bench. You know, when I first heard you playing in that practice room months ago, I knew you had something special, but I never imagined how quickly you would grow. Elena smiled, flexing her tired fingers. I have a good teacher. You have more than that, Ms. Rivera corrected. You have drive, passion, and something else, a kind of resilience. Most students who faced what you did at the showcase would have crumbled. You turned it into a triumph. I almost ran off stage, Elena admitted, but you didn't. That's what matters. Ms. Rivera closed the piano lid gently. I have something for you. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small wrapped package. A little early for Christmas, but I thought you could use it now. Elena unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a recording. Glenn Gould playing Bach's Goldberg Variations. It wasn't just any recording, though. It was an original vinyl pressing from 1955, rare and valuable. This was my first introduction to Bach, Ms. Rivera explained. My teacher gave it to me when I was about your age. I've listened to it before every important performance of my life. I can't accept this, Elena protested. It's too valuable. That's exactly why you should have it, Ms. Rivera insisted. Great music should be passed along to those who will honor it. Listen to it before your audition. Let it remind you why we do this, not for applause or recognition, but for those moments when the music becomes something larger than ourselves. The weekend before the audition, Elena received an unexpected visitor at the conservatory. She was polishing the trophy case in the main lobby when a familiar voice spoke behind her. You missed a spot. Elena turned to find Zoe Williams standing there. She looked different, less polished, more subdued. Her suspension had ended the week before, but this was the first time they'd come face to face since the showcase. What do you want, Zoe? Elena asked warily. Zoe shifted uncomfortably. I heard you're auditioning for Clifton. News travels fast. Yeah, well. Zoe looked down at her designer shoes. I just wanted to say, what we did was wrong, really wrong. And I'm sorry. Elena studied her, searching for sincerity. To her surprise, she found it. Why did you do it? Was it really so horrible to think that someone like me could play piano? It wasn't about you, not really, Zoe sighed. It was about me, about proving I was better, special. My whole life, my parents have pushed me to be the best. When I heard you playing that night, it scared me. You had this raw talent that I've worked years to develop. She shook her head. It's no excuse. I was cruel and I'm sorry. Elena had imagined this moment many times, confronting Zoe, making her admit what she'd done. But now that it was happening, she felt no satisfaction, only a strange sort of pity. I accept your apology, she said simply. Zoe looked relieved, then hesitant again. So, Clifton, huh? That's a big deal. If I get in, you will. There was no bitterness in Zoe's voice, just resignation. You're better than most of us here, including me. As Zoe walked away, Elena felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The past few months had been focused on preparation for the future, but this conversation had given her something else, closure on the past. That night, Elena sat with Grandma Rose on their small balcony, looking at the stars. Tomorrow they would drive to Clifton for the audition. Ms. Rivera was coming too for moral support. Everything they owned was packed in boxes, ready for whatever came next. Are you scared? Grandma Rose asked, wrapping a blanket around their shoulders against the November chill. Terrified, Elena admitted, but not like before. It's a good kind of scared, like standing at the edge of something big. Grandma Rose nodded. Your mother felt that way before her first big singing competition. She told me it felt like her whole life was about to change. Did it? Change, I mean. In ways she never expected. Grandma Rose's eyes grew distant with memory. She didn't win that competition. But she met your father there. She squeezed Elena's hand. Life has a funny way of working out, sweetheart. Sometimes the thing you think you want leads you to something even better. Elena leaned her head on her grandmother's shoulder, thinking about all the twists and turns that had led her here, from cleaning practice rooms in secret to preparing for an audition that could change her life. It had started with a cruel joke, but somehow that cruelty had opened a door. Whatever happens tomorrow, she said softly. I'm glad I played that first note. Grandma Rose kissed the top of her head. So am I, my brave girl. So am I. 3 years later, Elena stood in the wings of the Westbrook Conservatory's recital hall, watching the crowd fill the seats. Her hands were steady, her breathing calm. This wasn't her first major performance anymore, not by a long shot. But tonight felt special in a different way. Tonight was about coming full circle. Nervous, Ms. Rivera appeared beside her, elegant in a dark blue dress. Elena smiled. Actually, no, just reflective. That's appropriate. Ms. Rivera squeezed her arm. It's not every day you return as a conquering hero. Elena laughed softly. Hardly a hero. Tell that to the students who've been talking about nothing else for weeks. Ms. Rivera nodded toward the audience, where several current Westbrook students sat clutching programs. You're practically a legend here now. It was strange to think about. 3 years ago, Elena had been invisible in these halls. Just the girl who emptied trash cans and mopped floors. Now her name was on posters throughout the building. Special guest performer Elena Marsh, Clifton Academy Scholar and winner of the National Young Artists Competition. So much had changed since that fateful showcase. Her audition at Clifton had gone better than she'd dared to hope. The panel had stopped her halfway through her second piece to offer her not just admission, but their top scholarship. The move had been challenging. Grandma Rose had indeed relocated to Portland to live with her sister, and though they spoke every day, Elena missed her terribly. But Clifton had opened doors Elena hadn't known existed. Under the guidance of Victor Antonoff, who had become her primary instructor, she'd developed a technique and range that still sometimes surprised her. She'd traveled to competitions across the country, performed with orchestras, even recorded a small album of Chopin nocturnes that had received glowing reviews in classical music circles. And now, at 20, she was back where it all began, this time by invitation, not as a joke but as an honored guest. 5 minutes, a stagehand called. Elena nodded, straightening the simple black dress she'd chosen for tonight's performance. Not secondhand this time, but still modest compared to what many performers wore. Some things about her hadn't changed. I should find my seat, Ms. Rivera said. Your grandmother arrived safely? Yes, she's in the front row with your husband. Elena smiled. Thank you again for picking her up from the airport. Of course. Ms. Rivera hugged her quickly. Play beautifully. Not that I need to tell you that. As Ms. Rivera left, Elena closed her eyes, centering herself. The piece she'd chosen for tonight was more challenging than anything she'd played in this hall before. Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, accompanied by Westbrook's Student Orchestra. But the technical difficulty wasn't what occupied her thoughts. 3 years ago, she'd stood in the same spot, terrified and alone, about to face humiliation. Tonight, she wanted her performance to be more than just a demonstration of how far she'd come. She wanted it to be a gift, to this place that had both wounded and healed her, to the people who had believed in her, and to the ones who hadn't. Dr. Reed's voice came through the speakers, welcoming the audience and introducing Elena with a warmth that still felt surreal. As applause filled the hall, she stepped onto the stage. The lights were just as bright as she remembered, but this time she didn't squint or shy away from them. She found Grandma Rose in the front row, her face shining with pride. Beside her sat Ms. Rivera and her husband, and next to them, surprisingly, was Lily Chen, who had transferred to Juilliard last year but had come back specifically for this performance. Elena took her seat at the Steinway, the same one that had been sabotaged years ago, now perfectly tuned and waiting for her touch. The student conductor raised his baton, the orchestra poised to begin. In the moment before the music started, Elena caught sight of someone slipping into a seat near the back. Zoe Williams. Their paths had crossed occasionally over the years at competitions, their relationship evolving from enemies to cautious acquaintances to something approaching mutual respect. Elena hadn't expected her to come tonight. Then the baton fell. The orchestra began the dark, swelling introduction to the concerto, and everything else faded away. When it was time for the piano to enter, Elena's fingers found the keys with confidence and sensitivity born of thousands of hours of practice. The Rachmaninoff was a conversation between piano and orchestra, between technical brilliance and raw emotion. Elena had chosen it not just to showcase her skills, but because its journey from darkness to triumph mirrored her own. As she played, she poured everything into the music. The memory of late nights cleaning empty rooms, the sting of humiliation, the joy of discovery, the bittersweet pain of leaving home, the triumph of finding her place in the world. The final movement built to its conclusion, piano and orchestra racing together toward a resolution that felt both inevitable and surprising. When the last chord rang out, Elena felt a sense of completion that went beyond the piece itself. The audience erupted in applause, rising to their feet. Elena stood bowing deeply to the orchestra first, then to the crowd. Flowers were brought to the stage, roses from Dr. Reed, wildflowers from the students. As she accepted them, Elena caught sight of Grandma Rose wiping tears from her cheeks, and she had to blink back her own. The reception afterward was held in the conservatory's grand lobby. Elena moved through the crowd accepting congratulations, catching up with former instructors, meeting current students who asked for advice or autographs. That part still felt strange. Quite a homecoming, a voice said behind her. Elena turned to find Victor Antonov, her mentor from Clifton, holding a glass of champagne. "You came," she exclaimed, surprised and touched. He'd mentioned possibly attending but hadn't confirmed. "And miss my star pupil's triumphant return? Never." He clinked his glass against her water. "Though I suspect I'll be seeing less of you in the future." Elena tilted her head, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "I had an interesting conversation with Dr. Reed earlier." Victor's eyes twinkled. "Seems Westbrook is looking to expand their outreach program. They want to offer music education to talented kids who wouldn't normally have access to it. Children from lower income schools, refugees, anyone with passion, but limited opportunities." He raised an eyebrow. "They're looking for someone to head the initiative, someone who understands both worlds." Understanding dawned slowly. "Me? But I'm still a student myself. A student who's accomplished more in 3 years than many do in a decade." Victor shrugged. "Besides, the position wouldn't start until after your graduation next spring. Just something to consider." Before Elena could respond, she was pulled away by a group of eager high school students with questions about Clifton. The conversation with Victor lingered in her mind, though, a seed planted that would need time to grow. Later, as the crowd thinned, Elena found herself standing near the practice room where she'd first been discovered playing. On impulse, she slipped inside, letting the door close behind her. The room looked smaller than she remembered, the upright piano less imposing. She sat on the bench, running her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them. A soft knock at the door interrupted her reverie. She looked up to see Lily holding 2 cups of tea. "Thought you might need a moment away from your fan club," Lily said, offering her one of the cups. "This used to be your hiding spot, right?" Elena smiled, touched that Lily remembered. "Not hiding exactly, just finding myself." Lily sat beside her on the bench. "Your Rachmaninoff was incredible. I'm pretty sure half the piano students are considering changing majors after hearing you. Now you're exaggerating." "Only slightly." Lily sipped her tea. "I heard about the outreach program they want you for." "You should do it." Elena raised her eyebrows. "News travels fast." "It's a small world, classical music." Lily bumped her shoulder gently. "Seriously, though. Think of all the kids out there like you were. Working jobs, no money for lessons, but with so much music inside them, you could change their lives." The idea resonated more than Elena wanted to admit. As much as she loved performing, there was something powerful about the thought of opening doors for others, the way Ms. Rivera and Victor had done for her. "Maybe," she said, "after graduation, I still have a lot to learn myself. Don't we all?" Lily stood, stretching. "Come on, your grandmother's looking for you." "Something about needing to leave for the airport early tomorrow?" As they walked back toward the lobby, they passed a wall of photographs, Westbrook's distinguished alumni. Among them now hung a picture of Elena at her first professional concert. Her hands blurred over the keys, her face transported by the music. "Still feels weird," Elena murmured, nodding toward the photo. "Better get used to it," Lily replied. "Something tells me there will be more pictures on more walls before you're done." In the lobby, Grandma Rose was chatting animatedly with a group that included Dr. Reed, Ms. Rivera, and several Clifton students who had come to support Elena. Her face lit up when she spotted her granddaughter. "There she is," Grandma Rose called, waving her over. "I was just telling everyone about your first keyboard. Remember that old thing with the missing D key?" You had to hum the note whenever you came to it in a piece. Everyone laughed, and Elena felt a rush of affection so strong it almost overwhelmed her. From a missing D key to Rachmaninoff at Westbrook, it had been quite a journey. Later that night, back in her hotel room, Elena called Grandma Rose, who was staying with Ms. Rivera during their brief visit. "Did you have a good time tonight?" Elena asked, already knowing the answer from her grandmother's beaming face throughout the evening. "The best?" Grandma Rose replied. "I was so proud I thought my heart might burst. But you know what made me happiest? What? Watching you talk to those young students afterward. The way you listened to them, encouraged them. You reminded me of Ms. Rivera when she first took you under her wing." Elena thought about the outreach program, about all the children who might be out there right now, playing on makeshift instruments, dreaming of music but seeing no path forward. "I've been thinking," she said slowly, "after graduation, I might come back here. Not just to perform, to teach." "I think that's a wonderful idea," Grandma Rose said softly. "Full circle." "Full circle," Elena agreed. After they hung up, Elena stood by the hotel window looking out at the city lights. 3 years ago, she'd stood on a stage and played a single note that had silenced a room full of people who'd come to laugh at her. That note had changed everything. Now she had the chance to help others find their own first notes, their own voices. The thought filled her with a quiet joy that felt different from the thrill of performance, but just as powerful. Music had given her a way out of one life and into another. Now perhaps she could hold the door open for someone else.